Hello all, welcome to the show. I'm Gus Gagliardi and this is Fire Code Tech. On Fire Code Tech, we interview fire protection professionals from all different careers and backgrounds in order to provide insight and a resource for those in the field. My goal is to help you become a more informed fire protection professional. Fire Code Tech has interviews with engineers and researchers, fire marshals, and insurance professionals, and highlights topics like codes and standards, engineering systems, professional development, and trending topics in the industry. So if you're someone who wants to know more about fire protection or the fascinating stories of those who are in the field, you're in the right place. Hello all, welcome to episode 39 of Fire Code Tech. On this episode we have Joseph Cervantes. This episode is really interesting because we get to talk about the perspective shift from Joseph making his way from a technician to somebody who has managed operations and, national business development. I really enjoyed talking with Joseph. He has an infectious, motivational tone that I really enjoyed, and some really big charisma and some awesome takeaways for any professional. If you need a dose of get up and go get 'em on your Monday morning, this episode is going to be just right for you. Joseph also runs a online YouTube show, Show Me the Code, where he talks with professionals about different fire alarm and technology topics such as fire service access elevators and bidirectional amplifiers. You can check out some links in the show notes. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and follow us on social media. Oh, and if you wouldn't mind, give us a review on Apple Podcasts. That helps out the show so much. Let's get into the show. Well, Joseph, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Welcome to Fire Code Tech.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so we were kicking around a couple topics before we got started, but yeah, we're just kind of getting to know each other, and I always kind of like to start off these podcasts with how you got into fire and life safety. And I feel like you were about to dive into that bit of exposition about your career, but I realized that we hadn't hit record yet. So yeah, would you tell me a little bit about that, Joseph?
Yeah. The interesting thing is we kind of don't know when we're coming out of high school, in my opinion, a lot of us at least, what direction we want to go in, right? We're thinking, there's a lot of different opportunities out there. I could follow in pathways of some of my mentors, or I could really just develop who I want to be, right? And you can do that every day. I've found over my life that you can kind of rediscover yourself every day and recreate who you want to be at any given time. You're never stagnant, right? Continual learning, continual education, and continuous improvement on yourself. Um, so I started really young working. I did flooring. I used to help out my brother-in-law who owned his own company, and we would do that stuff on the weekends. And then I grew a little bit, and became of working age. We're talking 16 here, and I would work for longer periods. We'd work weekends, work over the weekend, at schools and things like that, installing cafeterias and doing, Toys R Us's and stuff. And it really led to me understanding craftsmanship. And I thought, this is a fun career, but it's hard. It's late, it's pretty laborious. You're lifting a lot of weight and stuff with carpet and tile and all that stuff. And as I got into high school, I wanted to hang out more with my friends, but I still wanted to earn an income. And so I had started working at Disneyland. And I was there as a cast member at Disneyland for about a year and a half, just finishing up high school. Uh, and funny enough, man, my car broke down, and I didn't have anything to fall back on. Disneyland was about a half hour away, 35, 40 minutes away. And so I'd have to, figure it out or get something local as an opportunity until I can get my car back up and running. And I get a call from my brother-in-law, and he says, "Hey, man, I went down to this company out in Long Beach. You need to go check them out." He said they're a low voltage installation company, and he said you love working with electronics and stuff, and I've known that about you. So why don't you go check them out? So I knew how to hook up car stereos. And, that was the gist of it. Maybe some VCRs. I was the guy that took apart stuff at home and put it all back together, right? Electronics and all that good stuff. So I went down and I interviewed, and within about an hour, I had the job. And that's where it started, man. And it kind of just like what you were saying. You have this mentality where you just want more. And for me, coming in as a technician, um, I didn't know anything, but I had a hunger. And every day I would show up. I'd have my tool bags. The first day I remember going out and getting some tools and stuff, some hand tools, and looked around. The industry wasn't really, we didn't have the internet like that, right? It was still dial up, but I knew how to search around for things. I'd go to Home Depot and stuff and look for tools. And I'd also ask some of the guys, hey, what are some of the common tools that you use on a regular basis? So asking questions, I was able to emulate what the senior guys were doing. And I would learn how to work with a multimeter or work with hand tools day to day. But then I would also in the morning before, when everybody was standing around, they're out smoking a cigarette or having a drink, coffee or something, I'm asking a senior guy to put a trouble on a panel, saying, "Hey, put a ground fault or put a short or put a trouble on that system so I can figure it out." Right. And there was a method to my madness because what they didn't see was that when I was at home, I was reading the code book and I was opening up drawings and I was looking at all the general notes sections of the drawings to understand what the heck I was doing. I'm out there. I know how to read schematics, right? I installed car stereos. I did electronics. Like this is just a little bit bigger scale, but everything's circuits. And so, I had to move in that direction to really apply myself and say, if you're here for 8 hours a day to learn this thing, learn how to do it. You're in a really fast paced environment. You get left behind pretty quick if you don't move. And I saw what my lead guys had put up with, and I kind of learned from them. And yeah, within 6 months, I was already seeking out NISET.
That's
So I was just really aggressive, young.
Yeah, that's probably like the best thing you could be as a young professional getting into the industry. You're never gonna know everything that you need to. So I love hearing about people's stories and people's ambition and drive because I think it's infectious. This hustle and this thought of continual development, which is something that we've already touched on a couple times now, but yeah, I love that story of like having some knowledge of, AV and a little bit of, the component architecture of electronics and just
Yeah.
kind of seeking out this first role and diving head in. That's awesome.
Absolutely, absolutely. Like I said, I'm here for 8 hours of my life, and I don't know about everybody that listens to your podcast, but I look at my life very seriously from a perspective of every moment has to matter. Right? It doesn't mean that I'm doing something every moment that may matter to somebody else, but it has to be. We have to live with intention. Like you have to live intentionally. Everything that you do has to matter for something, and if you're not doing something that is being intentional, then you're not respecting yourself. And so when I came into that role, I said, look, I'm getting off of my knees doing carpet and flooring and stuff, and I'm going to go install electronic systems in a building. And I knew a little bit about them, but it was fire alarm, and that seemed pretty serious to me. So I felt, well, if I'm watching my senior guy open up drawings, he's reading something, he's talking to these building inspectors and talking to this guy, like these are serious things that they're doing. I need to know that because if I want to be that, I have to know what they know.
Yeah, there's some definitely an added like implication to fire and life safety work where you feel early on in your career that yes, you're learning, but there is this impetus to figure it out because these systems are not just ancillary to the building. They have impact on people's lives. So, yeah,
Yeah,
I've
even
felt
even
that thing.
us, even us, and I'll tell you some stories as we move through the conversation about how it even impacts us today, and we don't even realize it. So,
Yeah, that's
but
great. So, I always like to get a sense of people's like kind of project work. We're still, or, early on in your career in this part of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
discussion, but, like moving forward, what are these kind of projects that become some of these formative experiences early on in your career, Joseph?
Yeah, so as a project technician, I think through every phase of my career, I've had really dramatic experiences that have kind of opened my eyes. And it's from a couple of different levels, right? It's not necessarily just a project itself, but it's the enormity of the responsibility that you have. And when you realize that, it creates a level of consciousness that you take, and you're like, wow, okay, I matter, right? So in my role at DC Associates and Fire Call, it was interesting as a senior guy going out and installing my first system. And my very first project that I went on by myself, it was a little company, Mary, in Torrance, California. And I went and started their cup facility. We were the first integrator to go into this complex. They wanted to try out a new guy or a new gal in town, right? And so we came in. I started that system out the first time around, ever installing wire by myself, all that stuff, trimming it out, and it turned green, programmed perfectly, and all the devices tested because I went through meticulously and I like forced myself to say, don't make any mistakes, right? It's a life safety system. And my wiring was always really clean and all that kind of stuff. So that was very impactful for me because then I ended up getting awarded myself a 5-story expansion of inpatient hospital stuff. They gave me the project and they said, well, you already have the relationships out there. Go run the thing, and we're going to convert this thing from that vendor to us. And that was huge, right? That hospital still stands today. It's got an emergency room. It's got a NICU unit, a L&D ward. We did all kinds of crazy stuff, like wand doors and infant abduction, and so it's like it's still a living, breathing facility, and it still serves people today. It's saving people's lives even today, right? So that matters.
Wow.
And then as I continued on as a project manager, for instance. Um, I ended up managing almost about $9 million in fire alarm work, and that's pretty substantial in fire alarm when you're talking, little parts and smarts projects as well as large construction jobs, and that was a lot of Kaiser Permanente work in Los Angeles for Siemens, and it was just so great of an experience to understand P&L. It helped me to understand the business side, how to manage people effectively and how to take what I learned as a technician and just translate that into a bigger mindset of delegation. Because I can't succeed alone. It takes my team in order to succeed at these projects because these things are behemoths, right? We're talking smoke control, full active smoke control, 5,000 addressable points on fire alarm systems. And we're integrating with mechanical contractors and elevator guys and all this stuff, but you're maintaining a business at $9 million. It's just a large responsibility. And then, the next level up from there was moving on to Johnson Controls and becoming an operations manager. And again, turning that volume up, seen it from the next level of visibility, which is more 30,000 foot perspective, and understanding how each individual in a business can maximize their efficiencies and their potential if you give people a good structure and you help them to understand their roles. And if they understand that leadership is there to be in the foxhole with them and guide them through, it really helped me to learn business from a totally different perspective. Standardization, making people good at what they do because they're repeating the same process over and over again. And then understanding that we can make these technologies plug and play. And so that was huge, huge, huge from my perspective, moving on in my career into where I'm at today at Space Age.
Man, there's so much good stuff to unpack there. I love what you were talking about with that panel lighting up green the first time. I can only imagine like the emotion of that as somebody who's just got their first big project. That I can like feel that as you're talking about it, as a huge moment. And then
You spend 6 months on some of these jobs. These are hours of your life that you're spending frustrated, tinkering, trying to figure this stuff out. And when you turn it on and it works, it was monumental for me mentally to say I can do this.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. And then
Yeah.
moving on to those large scale projects with, thousands of points. Those are huge projects, with the complexity is off the walls to deal with these complicated systems, smoke control. I mean, it doesn't get any more hard to put together than smoke control for fire alarm in my estimation. I mean, that's about as tricky as it gets.
It
Uh,
really helped me to have respect for the fire alarm project managers, because we are the quarterback between the local authority, the FPEs, the architects, the engineers, the mechanical contractor, the sprinkler contractor, the door contractor, the ceiling tile contractor, the electrical contractor. Um, and nowadays, obviously, we're getting into concrete, we're getting into two-way communication systems. Like there's so many of those different trades, elevators, and they all have to integrate. Generators, fire pumps, like they all communicate to this central core system.
Yeah, that's so great. Yeah, integrated systems and something I really wanted to touch on that you covered in your quick recap on your career so far is like
Sure.
this management development or this focus on people and interaction with people. I think is like a very crucial step in the development of a career and like kind of this moving up is understanding how to motivate and how to interact with people and how to facilitate teamwork better. So I love that theme because it's something I'm kind of feeling in the position of what I'm experiencing right now as a developing professional, like how to be a motivator, how to be a team player, how to be somebody who facilitates people to get things done. So I love hearing about that.
Yeah, nobody likes to be told what to do. They want to be shown, right? And the one thing that I always can stand behind for myself is I'm going to be the first one in, and you're going to see me walk through that. You're going to see me walk through that door, and I need a band of people behind me that want to follow, and not necessarily they're not following me, but they're following in my direction, right? And so I can't inspire people if I don't know what I'm talking about, if I've never had the experience of doing it. I tell new sales professionals, please go out in the field and do the work, physically pull the wire, install the devices, so you understand what it takes, so that when you bid a job, you're bidding it from the perspective of I have physical experience in doing that role, right? um, Engineers go out and physically see a system work. I tell my partners and my coworkers here in the manufacturing world all the time. I send them pictures and say, "Look, our system's installed in the biggest high rise out in this major city. Like this is you. You built these boxes, and this wouldn't have been possible if it wasn't for you for what you do." We all have to understand that role that we play, right? As a technician, as a project manager, as an ops manager, we all play a certain role in a organization professionally, and even in our personal lives. But I'll go back to a book. It's called Good to Great. As an ops manager, I had to understand the right people in the right place on the bus, because it's a very packed bus and we're all going in that direction, and I'm driving the bus as an ops manager, and I need to make sure that I have the right people on that bus first of all, but then I want to make sure that they're in the right positions to maximize their best characteristics and capabilities, right? If they're analytical, I don't want them in a position that an emotive person would succeed at, because maybe they're more closed off and they want to think about what they have to say before they approach a response, whereas that needs somebody that's more prompt to give a faster response, right?
Hmm.
And I think that was my best understanding in management was to really read people, understand who it is that I'm working with, and lead by example. The same as being a parent. Lead by example. Get in the foxhole with people. Make sure that they understand what you're asking of them. So you have to set good expectations up front, but you have to show them how to perform and how to be successful at what you're asking them to do. And
Yeah.
when they see that and they can replicate that and repeat that process over and over again because you've created a standard way to do it, Now people can succeed, and it's like football. You don't think when you're out there, you just do it. It's second nature.
Yeah, that's all great stuff. Yeah, I think there's so much to be said for, the best leaders that I work with are all set good examples of being a team player, set good examples of going beyond expectations, set good examples of facilitating teamwork and bringing a team together that, like a team builder or somebody who knows how to have that emotional intelligence that you're talking about to
Right.
key into what's important to people and what's important to the business. So I think that's all really, really great stuff. I wanted to, break in a little bit more on, you work for some really huge projects with really, big budgets and some powerhouses in the industry like JCI and Siemens. And I just, like as somebody who's worked for predominantly smaller companies, like how did these roles like kind of shape you? I mean, it seems like they were extremely influential, but from your perspective, how did they shape you in your career?
Yeah, no, great question. I'll tell you this. Every experience I've ever gone into in my life as a role or an opportunity, I'm always interviewing that company, believe it or not. When I walk into an interview, I'm not walking into an interview for them to just know about me. Like, I want you to put me in my position. I want you to show me what my day-to-day operation looks like so that I can see if it fits good for my energy, because I bring a lot to the table, right? Uh, and I think self confidence is a good thing. That was the only way of going from a small company with less than 50 employees at DCA or Fire Call, very small operations. But knowing that, like, the installation was second nature to me. I was already nice at level 2, so I understood the code. I understood how to reference the code. I understand how to research the code. I knew how to have relationships with AHJs because I had sat through numerous certificate of occupancy inspections. Um, so going into the roles at Siemens, particularly, I was very confident. As a matter of fact, I think in 6 months I went from being a senior level technician to be a project manager level 1, and then a year later I was a project manager level 2, which is really high ranking. I was like in the President's Club. Um, where they ranked me with all the project managers in the U.S. And they obviously Siemens took a very critical role with me growing in my confidence in the industry. And then Johnson Controls was like, okay, what can I apply that I learned at Siemens? And the difference I think between companies like Siemens and say an installation company, smaller installation company, is that they invest in the employee. They want you to learn. They'll pay for you to continue your education. I went and took my PMP exam. I missed it literally by I think 2 percentage points. It was pretty horrible, and I never retook the test. I don't know why, but I still remember the criteria and understand how to lay out a project. So it was never about not being capable going into those roles. It was just about me trusting my intuition and myself and my capabilities and saying, listen, I know I'm a 30-year-old kid, because I still looked at myself at that. I knew I was a 30-year-old kid going in and running a $35 million operations like Johnson Controls, but it's nothing like I haven't done it before, just more volume. So I have to be responsible for more. Let me grow into the role, but don't be afraid of the role.
Yeah, I think that that's a great point about that confidence and that ambition to learn and kind of to grow. You never have all the tools you need to succeed at a role when you get into it, and kind being adaptive and getting in there and not being timid and just kind of grabbing the bull by the horns and going after it. I think that's the mentality that I see. It's like a real entrepreneurial spirit and just of the people who get things done. I see that very commonly.
Well, I think a lot of the times when we take jobs, right? We take a job and we think, oh, well, I should already know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And when we don't know what we're doing, we have an option. We have a choice. Either go learn about what you're doing or try to fumble your way through it. And personally, it doesn't feel comfortable to not know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And so I always try to prepare myself as much as possible before I take something on and engage it. And I mean, I had what 16 years of experience in fire alarm. So the fire alarm wasn't the part that was the unknown. It was how do I manage a company? Like you're putting a huge load on my shoulders, and how do I manage that? And I'll tell you, I created standards. The same thing I do in my life. You know, when you brush your teeth, Gus,
Hmm.
what hand are you? Right-handed or left-handed?
Right hand.
Your right hand, right? Okay, so when you're brushing your teeth with your right hand, you're pretty good at it, right?
Sure.
Do you think about it when you're doing it?
No.
No, it's secondhand nature, right? I just go at it. I put the toothbrush on the same or the toothpaste on the same way, and I brush my whatever. You get my point.
Sure.
So when we show up to any role or any responsibility that we have to create standardization in the way that we approach that role. And when we create a standard way of doing things, I check my emails first, I respond to them, I go to my phones, I check my voicemail, I do that, and then I do this, and this. But each one of those tasks has a particular way that I've set that I do it because it's the most efficient for me. It's similar to brushing my teeth. The more I repeat something, the better I get at it, right? Where I don't even have to think about it, like I brush my teeth. Well, when it comes to fire alarm or managing a company or anything like that, the more you repeat what you're doing, the better you get at it. And at Johnson Controls, the more I repeated what I was doing, which was creating a standard way for people to do their role and for us to look at the numbers every month and for us to review the month and for us to review continuous improvement. As we started to implement strategy in repetition, the financial side of the business grew. And we ended up going from like some numbers wise, those that listen to you, from a 17 to a 22% EBITDA over the course of 4 years.
Wow.
And it was just it was focusing on not rigidity. Like I know some people may have called me the ethic police in that role. I was very responsible because I managed safety and yeah, so I was kind of by the book. But when it came to managing projects and managing installation practices, financially we benefited from what I learned at Siemens and going through my PMP because it was very structured and we knew how to protect ourselves from the risks that we see on construction projects all the time with delays. And we just got over some with COVID, right? We're still dealing with delays now, but the encumbrances of what that brings onto an organization is huge. And some people don't realize that, but it costs an organization to still manage through these times when the manpower isn't being as productive. And
Yeah.
so we had to know how to get through these sorts of events and still be profitable because we're in business to make a profit.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. Yeah, that's great points about documentation, like documenting the role and
yes.
having a playbook. I think
Yes.
that in times when, you falter or you don't know what to do, to have a playbook to look back and say, no, this is how we do it. This is the process. And,
Right.
I don't think about how far am I on this project? How done are we? I think that is so important. And sometimes I think it's easy to lose sight of having that playbook and that documentation. I think it takes away that active brain and trying to figure it out and just makes it move forward. I think that's a great point.
Right.
But
Absolutely, dude. That is absolutely key. That is absolutely key to making a business profitable. Is you have to not think, and it takes experience, but how fast do you want to get there, right? How much experience do you want to attain? And that's where these experts that you can see out there in the industry, they all say we all have the same 24 hours in the day, right? How much are you willing to put in of yourself so that you can become who you want to be? And you see people that show up for 8 hours a day. You see people that show up for 12 hours a day. Maybe they put in 8 hours in the field, but they're doing 4 hours at home. Or like I used to do, I'd take out the code book and read the code book while I was using the restroom, right? I mean, little things like that. And it's funny now that I say it, but it's true because I was 19 years old. I'd use the restroom and I'd read the code book because I wanted to have an answer and I wanted to learn and I wanted to make more money while I was doing it. Because if I'm doing this for 8 hours a day, I better know what I'm doing, and I want to know what I'm doing.
Yeah, I think the people who get ahead, they'll put in that extra. They'll put in that little bit of I to do more because I mean, if you're not, and I've talked about this before, but if you're not putting in more effort, it doesn't always have to be more time, but it can be and often is more caring more about what you do. I
Yes.
think that you're going to see the dividends in the return on your career. And like you've said numerous times, not just accepting the status quo, but looking to improve and looking to grow and putting in that extra effort, whether it's, oh yeah, nobody's holding your hand and saying that you have to know the code. No, you probably could have got your job done only knowing a little bit about the code, but you chose to focus on excellence and to not only know the code, but be able to be versatile and be able to, speak about it with authority, which has been extremely influential in your career. So, I mean, I think that's awesome. Yeah, I really resonate with that.
Thank you, man.
I think every young professional should take a note and out of that book and say, you got to push forward and really focus on not just punching the clock. It's not for the company; it's for yourself. You're doing yourself a disservice if you don't.
Yes.
You're doing yourself a disservice if you don't put that energy in. Um, that's
You
how I feel.
coming out of operations, it's funny. I was told one thing. I always go back to football. I'm a big football fan, right? But I always go back to something about that I was told, and that I still continued to tell people even after I learned it. And I learned this pretty young. Consider a company a 5 gallon bucket of water, and it's filled up right to below the brim. You take your fist and you shove it in that water. You raise the level of that water, right? The level of water in that bucket rose just that much because you filled that space that we didn't know was there, but you filled the space. Now, you can pull your hand out of the water, and that water level will recede just a little bit, but the hole that you left will fill itself in. You're never bigger than the organization. An organization is the sum of all the parts, and so we have to contribute our part to that organization. Make sure you're in the right position on the bus, and that you're put in a position to succeed. You have to any young professional getting into any position that they are given. If you show up to work and they're like, okay, just go over there in the corner and figure out what you're going to do, that's not going to inspire you. Unless you're inspired to say, oh, that's how you do it. Well, you know what? I want to be a manager one day. So if that's how you do it, let me introduce to you what a system looks like. I have a system I can show you how to do after 3 weeks, and it's going to increase your efficiencies. And then they hand you a manager's role, right? So there's a couple of ways to look at it. You can look at it as a negative because they didn't give you a role and you're identifying it for them, or you could see it as, this company really doesn't have it together for me. I want to grow, and this company seems to just want people to fall into an abyss.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. You can either choose to be defeated or you can see it as an opportunity and say, "Hey, I'm not neglected. I've just been given a blank slate to make my own roadmap and playbook for what success looks like." Um, I think that's a point. That's a mindset choice. Uh,
It's funny because when I go back to installation, knowing how to install car stereos, my first job, I remember pulling wire. I remember going to projects 5 o'clock in the morning. I was the guy that put the wire in the wire cart. I'd bring it into the building. I'd lift the ladders like I was the new guy. And I used to look at these senior guys, and they would sit around for an hour drinking coffee, smoking a cigarette, doing as builds, and I'm like, I want that. Like I want what he's doing. So how do I get there? And I knew that I had to know what he knew in order for me to get there. So it was encouragement for me to put a little bit of effort from myself into wanting to learn that, right? And it was a goal of wanting to be better. But the more that I learned, the more that I understood that it translated financially for me too. So I was 21 years old making almost $25 an hour. And for that period of time, it was 1997, 98. That was pretty good money for my age.
I mean, that's still good money now. It's still not bad money now. So there's still a lot of entry level people getting into the industry, hoping to make that much money. I mean, but no, I think that's great. Um, I love that sentiment about, it's in your best interest to be excellent. I agree.
You
Like
do
this.
what you do for 8 hours a day, man. You do what you do for 8 hours a day. Why not be great at it?
Yeah, yeah, I love that.
8 hours is a long time. Like 8 hours is a long, long time when you actually focus on the minutes. 8 hours is a long time.
Yeah, and it's your life, it's your 40 hours a week, it's your, however many hours a year, are
Yeah.
you really just going to phone it in for
Well,
that whole
so
time?
there's 2080 hours available of productive work every year, but
Right.
we only allot for 1640, I think it is, because employees have vacation time plus they have, obviously, this is my operations management experience. 2080. You have 2080 hours of physical work time that you can have as an individual to work a year. Like that's a lot of time. Think of the amount of movies you could watch in 2,000 hours, right?
Yeah.
Think of how many books you could read in 2,000 hours.
Yeah.
Like like if we're doing this stuff for 8 hours a day at least, I'm hoping everybody's doing it for 8 hours a day. You should be really good at what you're doing.
Yeah, that's great. So, yeah, I wanted to move on a little bit. I think that we've really covered some great pieces of your growth from technician and laying your foundations and fundamentals in the code and in the constructability of fire alarm systems. But I wanted to talk a bit about what you're doing now at Space Age Electronics and let people know about what gets you excited today and the challenges that you're tackling now in your career. But yeah, I'm interested as somebody who has continued to develop. What are your challenges now? What are your things that you see as growth? To contrasting to that management and some other things that we were talking about previously.
Sure. So in my previous life, I was a Tony Robbins. I'm sure you can hear it in my voice. I'm very passionate about what I do. Um, I let me ask you a question, Gus.
Sure.
You know, in your final days, even growing up before you knew what you were going to do,
Yeah.
what was your ultimate goal with your career? Like not from a role perspective, not to
Yeah.
have a title. Like what is your ultimate goal when they look back and they say this was Gus in this industry? What's your motivation?
Yeah, I think to be successful, to be independent, to be a team player, to be good,
Yeah,
broadly. I think just I think that's what winning looks like in my head.
sure.
To be good, to be well regarded.
Yeah, I consider my life like when we look back at my life, look at this dash, right? It's the dash that you're going to see on my tombstone that says from 1978 dash this year. And in that dash is experiences like this. That dash means this, what we're doing right now, right? And that dash to me is how and we all do this. I've learned a lot about the brain. How can I go back and solve some of the problems that I had, both as a child or as a teenager or as an adult or as a professional or as a father or as a mother or as a whatever. Like how can I fix something that I experienced in my life? So coming to Space Age, it was a very interesting situation that happened to me. Um, I won't get into all the details of what had happened, but I became available and I made a phone call. I gave myself a pity party for about 30 minutes after I became available. I threw a pity party, and I was really angry and frustrated and not understanding why things happen the way that they do. And I remember after that pity party, I looked at my. He was 4 years old at that point. He looked at me and said, "Dad, are you okay?" And I said, "I'm not okay right now, but I will be in a minute." And I picked up my phone and I made like 7 or 8 phone calls. And out of one of those phone calls, I had a random conversation with somebody and they said, "Hey, we'll give you a call back. I got to walk into a meeting." And it was probably about a week later that I got a call from who was then my hiring manager and the national business development manager, Christian White. And he said, "Hey, we wanted to talk to you about joining the team. Is there any way we can come out and meet with you?" And it took about a week and a half for them to situate it. And I didn't understand why, but they were flying out from Massachusetts and Florida to come see me. And I thought, wow, these guys got on an airplane and came out here to see me. Okay. And we went and had lunch, and the conversation started around, what do you want yourself to be? Like, who do you want to be? Because, like I said, we can recreate ourselves every day in whatever image we want to be. Today, you can decide to be a completely different person than you were yesterday. And I decided at that point that I wanted to be a change agent in this industry, that I wanted to leave a legacy. I want that dash to mean legacy. And here's who it touched. And for me, working at Space Age is building a legacy. Because, like you said, it's about yourself fitting a role within an organization. So I've always had the passion for life safety. I've always been very passionate about what I did. As an installer, as a project manager, as a technician, all that stuff, I saw the debilitating factors of lack of resources, product that just was not really good, wasn't manufactured very well, that caused me time. One of my projects that I installed, the electrician didn't install the conduit properly, and it took me almost a month and a half to pull a garage that should have only taken like 2 or 3 days. It was just a really bad install, and I spent like 33 hours one day working overnight because I was troubleshooting installation that was done improperly, and I remember falling asleep in the corridor, and the fire marshal woke me up during our inspection, and he's like, "Hey man, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh my god, I didn't sleep since Friday morning. I woke up Friday morning and it's Saturday night. I missed my Christmas party." And from that day, I had this conviction within myself to say, if there's something that I can do to fix this industry so that people don't have to do that anymore, I want to be responsible for that. So what I look at myself here at Space Age is I'm a liaison between that installation world that I cherish so much and all those installers and the project managers and superintendents and foremen that I treasure so much that put in that work every day to build buildings that we all use every day, malls and stores and grocery stores and Costco's and all that stuff, right? And a manufacturer who builds really, really cool stuff because they understand what the industry needs, and they're reinvesting money back into the industry by building new technology. And when they see that something's wrong, they fix it. They don't just let it continue to subside and think, "Oh well, it'll be fixed down the road." From a ceiling bracket to a document box where there's as-built missing on most installations that were done back in the 80s and 90s, nobody can find as-built for those systems. It's like, well, why not put a box in the fire command center? Now it's in the code, right? Uh, uh, um, Anyways, that conversation, it was about inspiring this industry to have no excuses for wanting to be better. And it fit perfectly for me. It was in my wheelhouse in life safety. I was talking to the people that I was working with my entire career, continuing to build relationships, but they mentioned one thing to me. They said, "We want you to be an influencer and we want you to be a change agent in the industry." And I took that seriously. So LinkedIn has become my social media channel of choice, and I use it religiously to stay in contact with all of my connections because there's a huge effect that happens when I can create a story or show a story one time to 10,000 people than to have 10,000 conversations about that same story. Now, I can retell that story to 5 or 10 people down the road if they ask me about it, but if they see it and 10,000 of them see it and it only took me 30 seconds to tell that story, I just told that same story 10,000 times in 30 seconds. So, from a business perspective, that makes a lot of sense. From a connections perspective, these people that I'm talking to are people like me as a technician and a project manager who need the technology that is going to make their life better. So, I'm trying to solve those problems that I couldn't solve as them in their role. And I was like, wow, what a perfect relationship where I can come in and be that liaison, but then I can start developing who I want to be in the industry. And that's when I got involved in industry relations. Became the secretary of the board for Society of Fire Protection Engineers down in San Diego. Became a board member, and now I'm the secretary of the board for the California Automatic Fire Alarm Association. I've sat on the work group for the I codes for Chapter 33, the 2021 edition. I'm now on a NFPA technical committee, 915, for remote testing. I'm involved in a lot of associations across the U.S. I do education across the U.S. And I'm becoming an influencer just by educating people on the codes that they need to understand in order to be successful at what they do. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah,
Wow.
that's great. Man, that's you talked about some great points in getting involved with professional societies and
Yes.
communities. What do you see as like the biggest impacts through this? Obviously, a common theme throughout your career has been networking and having influential people and mentors. How do these professional societies kind of play into that development we've been speaking about?
Well, so Napoleon Hill, I'm reading one of his books right now. Actually, I'm surprised I never heard of it. Uh, he talks about the Mastermind Group. Um, Carnegie talked about the Mastermind Group. Um, Teams, all teams, your team, any team, we're only as strong as our weakest link. And as professionals in an organization, if we all want to succeed as an organization, we have to pick up sometimes for the people that can't pick themselves up, right? And I think as an industry, we also have to do the same. And we're a very busy group of people. We have a lot of things going on. We all wear multiple hats, and sometimes education isn't always the easiest thing for us to find time for, right? But I think that when it comes to life safety systems, ultimately the builders are responsible to know the code, and the installing contractors that they hire and bring in are responsible to know the code for the people that expect them to know the code. So when you get involved in industry, it's I think what it becomes more is knowing the people that know the code and then learning it as you go because you're influenced by them. They become your mentors. And then you inevitably take their role and become a mentor for somebody else. So once you learn it, you can't just hold on to it and retain it. You got to pass it on. Um, but industry relations helps you to learn who the right people are, where they fit within your education and what you're going to need from them, because everybody comes into your there's a reason or a season, right? And 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 learning from those individuals, whether it's on a large scale basis where they're doing a presentation on a code, or if it's where you become a part of that membership and see them regularly and you interact with them regularly, and then maybe you do business with one another, or maybe they help you to find a business partner that you work with. Everybody has a role in your professional environment when it comes to associations. They're either in the industry as a connection, or they're going to be a resource for you down the road. So never lose sight of that.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. I love the big theme we've been talking about is continuous learning. And I understand that you have, I watched one of your Show Me the Code episodes where you're talking about fire service access elevators and was really interesting. But yeah, I wanted everybody who's listening to hear about what you're doing with Show Me the Code. Would you speak on that?
Yeah, so I actually didn't know anything about fire service access elevators uh, up until about a month and a half prior to recording that episode with Sagiv. Um, but I have, a lot of partners that we work with, and I connect with a lot of people on LinkedIn. So I get asked a lot of questions, and when somebody asks me a question, I like to research it and follow through and know the answer, right? And everything that we deal with in this industry is based on code. If it's not a code like a security system or a CCTV system, that's more of a white canvas. You're designing something to protect the owner. Fire alarm systems are health and safety, so they're mandated. It means that there's a standard way to install it, and you should know what you're doing. You do this for 8 hours a day, you should know what you're doing. So, show me the code is a way for me to give back to those individuals who don't always have the time or who may not have the confidence to call up a fire department official and say, what am I supposed to do about fire service access elevators? Or I'll be honest with you, a lot of the people that watch my stuff are actually in the fire service industry. They're fire protection, fire prevention, and they will watch these things and say, hey, look, I may not have had a chance to go watch a 4 hour course on it, but he gave me all of the groundwork that I needed to understand that. And so I've found industry experts in my career. Sagiv is one of them. I deal with him on a regular basis with CAFA and also with my interactions in the industry. Uh, Wayne Moore, who is probably one of the pioneers of NFPA 72. I interviewed on survivability and such a huge topic that goes over something that costs so much money if you don't get it right. The purpose of that is in sales, if you don't sell a fire alarm or a fire installation or a fire protection system, if you don't sell it right, it can cost an organization a lot of money. And that costs a lot of people a lot of sleep. It costs people their jobs. And it can cost an organization their business. So I'm trying to promote education so that people understand there's a right methodology to approach this. I have a contractor's license in my state because I'm supposed to understand this, and I may not have the time to do it, but you're providing me a repository that I can go back to watch over and over and over again until it drills into my head, and now I can recite it like you do.
Yeah, that's great. I love that you've chosen to cover in your YouTube series some of the like most difficult pieces of fire alarm. I saw you had emergency responder amplification systems, and these are some extremely difficult and nuanced and not very well covered areas of the code and of standards, and kind of burgeoning areas in the industry where people are still, if they're not just specialists, trying to figure these out. Depending on your jurisdiction, you might not have a ton of these buildings with these systems, and so this resource is invaluable for people who are trying to make buildings safer.
Yeah, well, the thing is, keep in mind is something. A lot of what we're seeing with fire service access elevators, with bidirectional amplifier, whatever you want to call it, distributed antenna, two-way communication systems for area of refuge, occupant evacuation elevators, all of these new requirements are part of what came out of the effects of 9/11. When the building code really started to be shaped around evacuation, exit access, and how do we protect individuals on opposing floors so that we can do something faster, right? So OEEs and FSAEs came in because we want to be able to access this fire occurrence faster. So we're going to protect the elevators a little bit more, but then there's individuals that can't get out of the building. We got to provide them areas of refuge, and those systems have to be survivable. And so the codes, remember, we're on 3-year cycles a lot of the time. A lot of the stuff is progressing from the west. So California's early adoption, and it goes across to the east. There are some progressive jurisdictions throughout the U.S., but really California is just, we're going through our triennial right now, and we're adopting 2024 approved language in the California Building Code in this next edition that'll be enforced in 2023. So we're going to be a year ahead of the building code even becoming official because, California sees that if something's beneficial to the industry, we're going to put it out there and make sure that the industry or the people, the civilization in that area knows that we're taking those proactive measures. And so it's being a part of that and helping to create awareness around those codes and standards and giving future information for those that are getting up to speed with those building codes and standards, because the buildings we're putting up today are going to be in the 2012, 2015 building code cycles. And that's important because you got to remember when your building permit was pulled, that's when the technology is going to be based on. And there was a lot of changes that went into effect 2012, 2015. And it's going to be necessary for us to be able to go back and look at that and say, okay, now I see the differences. Now I know how to apply the technology and not lose money as a business owner.
Man, yeah, I could go on for a good minute about the complexity of dealing with the code in California. I've never worked in a more difficult jurisdiction, and I've worked in New York City and a bunch of other very rigorous areas for codes and standards. But California is LA and parts of California are without a doubt the most difficult to um, be accurate with codes and standards that I've ever dealt with. So it's remarkable that they're so proactive that they're on the knife's edge of code adoption like that. It's kind of wild.
Yeah, and that's why industry relations matters. Like I sit on the CAFA board, and I'm grateful for that opportunity because it continues to call my attention every month when we're having our meetings and just talking as professionals, but like our state agency meeting where we had the Department of State Architects, the Office of the State Fire Marshal, the building listing materials officials, OSHPOD, who's changing their name, like all of these different code entities and state agencies, and they're talking about what to anticipate. I mean, as a business owner, as a building owner, as an engineer, as an architect, as a whatever, EE, if you're involved in construction and an association is offering you free online time with these entities and saying you can ask them questions about what you're anticipating, or hey, how do you interpret this? Get involved. Like there's nothing greater that you can do for your own education than to have a conversation with these people because they're going to tell you exactly what you need to do to be successful.
Yeah, that's a great point.
So yeah, continuous education, but just never see yourself as stagnant, especially in this industry, because technology is changing. The code changes every 3 years, and technology is staying far, far in advance of even where the code is today.
Right.
I'm pushing early adoption of 2024, 2027 language now.
Wow. That's incredible. Well, I think that's a pretty good tip for people, but I just wanted to round out the conversation with if you were going to, I think you've given a lot of good advice to professionals throughout this interview, but as sort of an endpoint for people who are looking to be competitive in the industry, what advice would you have for somebody? Maybe just any professional, but obviously you could make it fire alarm oriented as well.
Absolutely. So I have a couple of different mediums that I've always expressed myself. I have a couple of different YouTube channels. One of my business ventures that I did was meditation and motivation. It's called Your Cup of Joe. No play on my name, right? But so I try to motivate people to understand the facts of just overall life. I feel like I'm an old soul, right? And I've learned this one adage that I take with me and that I attribute to everything that I've either succeeded at or failed. What people may consider failure, I don't consider a bad thing, but I'll tell you why in a second. Your thoughts become your actions, and your actions become your reality. So your thoughts inspire intentional action. When you can be an observer of your thoughts and you can consciously focus on your thoughts and actually observe your thoughts, you can then control your actions because you decide what actions you want to take. Now, those actions that you take, depended on the quantity and the quality of those actions. If you have a plan and you execute a plan and you observe the plan to see what happened in the plan, if you failed or what you consider failure, or failure is actually showing you where you need to go in order to succeed. It's showing you what direction you need to go in. Based on the quantity of those actions that you take in that day, you will eventually experience that reality. If you only take 2 actions in that day, your reality will get to you in a year and a half. If you take 4 actions in the day, that reality will come to you in 9 months. If you take 50 actions a day, you'll see that reality in a month. If you take 100 actions in a day, you'll see that reality in a week. Your thoughts create your actions, and your actions create your reality. And it doesn't matter what you are trying to accomplish in your professional life, in your personal life, in being a better parent and being a better husband and being a better wife, in trying to get through school, your thoughts and how you observe your thoughts and how you live intentionally through your actions that will eventually accomplish a goal or a reality. And if you can document that, like we talked about having a plan, you will succeed. Don't lose faith in that. But when you're not consciously aware of your thoughts, you start to experience failure, and not having a plan, failure tends to stop people. We get paralysis by analysis, right? So I will go back to that. You're doing what you do for 8 hours a day professionally. Learn how to be an expert at that. Study at it. Learn your craft. You're if you want to be a parent, you're going to be that 24/7. Be good at it. Understand what your children need in order for you to be a good parent. You know, you want to be in a good relationship, learn what it means to have a good relationship. What you want to experience, you should be giving first. Like, there are little things that we can do, but again, it's our thoughts that inspire action. And it's how much action do we take in that day that we will experience the reality that we want. I will please put that in big bold letters over my name. Your thoughts create your actions, and your actions create your reality.
Yeah.
I'll leave you with that, Gus.
That's great. That's great. Joseph, thank you so much for coming on the
Appreciate it,
show.
man.
For people who want to find you, where can they go to find out more about Joseph Cervantes?
Yeah. So look me up, Your Cup of Joe. I should start doing that more on YouTube. And then you can also do Show Me the Code. If you're in fire protection, you can definitely find me there. If you're on LinkedIn, look for me on there, Joseph R. Cervantes Sr. And yeah, we'll all stay connected. You can become part of my network and learn some about what I do, or ask questions if you have them.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I'll throw some links down in the show notes. But yeah, thanks again, Joseph.
Hey, thank you for what you do. Keep educating, keep doing what you do, even on the days when you don't want to show up. Just show up, man, because you're
Yeah.
doing a good thing. I feel the same way after I have my podcasts or my videos, and it takes a lot of work to get there, and people don't see the post production editing and all those hours that you put into it, and searching for the experts and all that stuff. But congratulations for taking the steps necessary to make this dream that you've had a reality, and just keep going.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah. I appreciate that. Thank you,
Yeah.
sir.
Right on, man.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Be sure to share the episode with a friend if you enjoyed it. Don't forget that fire protection and life safety is serious business. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are by no means a professional consultation or a codes and standards interpretation. Be sure to contact a licensed professional if you are getting involved with fire protection and or life safety. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.